Hello there, welcome to the pod. Today we are chatting about 13 disease signs and symptoms that you can keep an eye out for in order to catch this stuff early. And after we dig into said signs and symptoms, we're also going to cover action steps that you can take as far as how to resolve these issues that you may be experiencing, or at the very least, get yourself heading in the right direction. Also, it goes without saying that there are way more than 13 signs and symptoms that our bodies give us. However, we are going to cover some of the most common or most apparent ones in this episode. Now, the point of this information is not to scare you. The point is just to recognize the communication that your body is giving you so that you can get out ahead of this stuff and ideally avoid more serious health situations down the road, just because it is far easier to keep up than it is to catch up. And the easiest way to think about this is via debt. A little bit of debt is not a huge deal, and it's relatively easy to get yourself out of. However, digging yourself into too deep of a financial hole can legitimately alter the entire course of your life and limit your choices in the future like crazy. And we obviously want to avoid an extreme situation like that in terms of our health. Now, if we look at the word itself, disease, dis-ease, lack of ease, right? Disease results in your experience of life being less easy or more difficult. Sure, you can live like a rock star and experience a very seemingly easy life for a bit, but it's only a matter of time until it catches up with you because the body can only handle so much. Living like a rock star is like the process of accumulating debt. It's pretty darn fun because it's almost as if you're playing with the house's money right up until reality sets in. For example, you'll hear folks say things like, I was absolutely fine until blank happened. I hit 40 or 50, or I had a heart attack, or I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. And the most important point of this entire episode is that this stuff does not happen overnight. It is cumulative. No one gets fat overnight. Cancer takes decades to develop, and heart attacks are years in the making. Now, because of this fact, it does not mean that you need to obsess over every single little health behavior. But what it does mean is that it's important to keep in mind that everything adds up. You may have heard about the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And in a nutshell, it talks about how when things happen, we may remember, we may not, we may even do our best to forget. But our bodies never forget. Our bodies keep the score. Same idea here. For example, no matter how healthy that we think that our lifestyle is from a nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress management standpoint, if we are experiencing health issues, our bodies aren't thriving. We are not healthy. Simple as that. And that's one of the most beautiful things about the body. It always tells you the truth. The mind may play tricks, but the body never lies. Okay, so now let's dig into some specifics, but before we do, keep in mind that just because something is common does not mean that it's normal. Meaning, the default state of your body is to thrive and be dis-ease free. That's what your body wants for itself, and that's what it wants for you. Okay, let's start at the top of your head via your hair and scalp. So things like a dry scalp, dandruff, brittle and easily breakable hair, excessive shedding, all of these things are abnormal and a sign that something is off. The eyes, the windows to the soul, right? Puffy, dry, and bloodshot eyes, bags, excessive watering, blurriness, floaters, even deteriorating vision. All of these things are far from ideal. The nose. If you're experiencing a runny nose, being stuffed up, difficulty breathing, all of these things are a signal. Even dry lips. Contrary to what the cosmetic industry would have you believe, chapstick isn't necessary. And if your lips are dry, cracking, bumpy, or anything of the sort, not great. The mouth is sort of like the canary in the coal mine when it comes to health. And so things like bleeding gums, receding gums, dental issues, i.e. cavities, needing of root canals, etc., are all signs of undesirable inflammation. The face as a whole is just an awesome predictor of your habits in the sense that I'm sure that you've had days where you've looked in the mirror and you're like, damn, I look rough today. Did I get stung by a bee on my entire face? Like, it looks totally inflated. And then there are other days when you're like, okay, I look healthy. I look good. Inflammation is super easily assessed in the face. And we touched on this briefly a minute ago, but things like bags under your eyes and general swelling is not what we're after, obviously. The throat and neck are nice indicators of health in that colds, viruses, and infections often manifest in the throat and neck area. For example, swollen lymph nodes in your neck can often let you know if you're potentially on the verge of coming down with something. Feeling like you have a lump in your throat, postnasal drip, coughing, constantly needing to clear your throat, swollen tonsils. The fact that so many folks get their tonsils removed is wild when you think about it, because every single thing in our bodies is there for a reason, including our tonsils. And the perceived need to remove them is a sign that, again, something is off. The same goes for our wisdom teeth. I have had 15 teeth pulled, some baby teeth and some adult teeth, because I had so much crowding going on in my mouth when I was younger. This is a clear sign that my jaw didn't form properly, because you are meant to have enough room for all of your teeth. Kiddos are meant to have a fair bit of space between their baby teeth, because as their baby teeth fall out and their adult teeth come in, they need lots of room for them because they're bigger. The chest and lungs. When I was younger, I had bronchitis too many times to count, and this was a clear sign that something was awry with my respiratory tract. Something that I find impacts my breathing a ton is whether I've consumed dairy or not. My immune system does not like dairy, and that intolerance tends to manifest primarily via labored breathing, a stuffy/runny nose, and the constant feeling of needing to clear my throat, which are all super common symptoms of dairy intolerance. Digestion. This is a biggie. In terms of whole body health, in my opinion, almost nothing is more important than your digestion, because the stomach is where we derive calories and nutrients from. And if we're not absorbing and assimilating calories or nutrients effectively, we die. The intestinal tract is also where the vast majority of our immune system lives. Our digestion impacts every single thing in our bodies, including our brains. The gut, or the stomach, is often referred to as the second brain. And I'm sure that you've noticed that when your digestion is off, you have a stomach bug, or heaven forbid, something as harsh as food poisoning. Man, brutal experience, and your cognitive function takes a massive hit. This is also why things like IBS, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, diverticulosis, GERD, or acid reflux are so detrimental and debilitating, as well as why stomach cancer is so fatal. You do not want anything to go wrong with your digestive tract, because again, this is where we derive calories and nutrients from, and we don't do well with a lack of essential nutrients, which makes perfect sense because they are labeled essential for a reason. If you are having any stomach troubles at all, I would highly recommend listening to episode number 204 of the pod titled Poop, What's Normal and What's Not, because so many people don't actually know what good digestion is just because they've never experienced it in their entire lives for a few reasons. One, you don't know what you don't know. And so if you haven't experienced anything different, you don't really have anything else to compare it to. And two, poor digestion is so common. And so if folks have the courage to talk to their friends or family members about this stuff, their friends and family members almost always have funky digestion too. And so they're comparing notes with people that are in the same boat as they are. And as a result, they tend to normalize it. And remember, common is not necessarily normal. Digestion is something that I prioritize with all of my clients, even if their primary goal is fat loss, because it's just that important for overall health and staving off all of these issues that we're talking about today. And I don't say that lightly. All of these symptoms are tied to your digestion in one way or another. Working our way down, we're at the fun bits now. Sexual function is an amazing indicator of our health status because the number one priority of evolution is to turn calories into babies. And so if things are off on the sexual reproduction front, that is a sign that something very well could be off systemically or in the body as a whole. If you're a woman who has gone through menopause, obviously you're not in a position to have children anymore. However, you should still have good sexual function. If you're a man of reproductive age, which is basically your entire adult life, you want to be able to get an erection without the need for things like Viagra or Cialis. And if you're a woman, ideally you're getting lubrication without the need for assistance. Erections and lubrication are a great indicator of things like good blood flow and healthy blood pressure. Because if you're not getting adequate blood flow to your reproductive organs, a good question to ask is, where else am I not getting sufficient blood flow? Maybe my heart, my brain? Shit, that is not good. Moving on to the limbs or arms and legs. Simple things like water retention and inflammation in your arms, hands, legs, and feet are great signs that something is off. For example, if you can't take your rings off at the end of the day, or your socks leave big indents in your legs and or ankles, these are signs of inflammation. Your hands shouldn't feel like sausages that are trying to burst out of their casing. They should feel super fluid and flexible, and you should be able to grab the skin and separate it from your fingers and hands. The same goes for your feet and toes. You may even find that your shoes get significantly tighter throughout the day, or you have more shoelace to work with on some days versus others. On days where you have less lace to play with, that is a sign of inflammation because your feet are literally swollen. The heat can play a role here, however, it's not the biggest factor. Inflammation is. The skin. Like the face, the skin is incredible feedback for whole body health. We have all seen people that are quote unquote glowing, right? That is not by accident. Humans are really good at looking at people and being able to tell quite quickly just how healthy they are. And the reason for that is, again, evolution's goal is to turn calories into babies. And so our eyes make it quick for us to identify whether someone is healthy and therefore can enhance our gene pool. And the skin is a very obvious way to assess that. Any skin issues like acne, pimples, excessive dryness, excessive oiliness, rashes, hives, eczema, psoriasis, all of these things are red flags. And essentially, anything that doesn't fall under the category of glowing leaves a lot to be desired. Now, I left the most obvious sign or symptom for last, and it is body fat. Holding excess body fat increases the risk of getting every single disease known to man. Heart disease, stroke, any and all types of cancer, autoimmune issues. If you want to avoid disease, for the love of God, get your weight under control, meaning be lean. All right, so now let's get to the actionable stuff. How do we get ourselves as healthy as possible and avoid, or at least delay, disease? Because we have to die of something, right? But ideally what happens is that we fall off of a cliff as opposed to slowly sliding down a ramp. Meaning, we want to be super healthy and robust into old age and die suddenly. We don't want to pick up all sorts of health conditions and slowly and excruciatingly die for like 2 decades. That is no way to live. So first up, we've got nutrition. Minimize your processed food consumption as much as possible and make the vast majority, if not virtually all of the food that you eat, single ingredient whole foods, with one super important caveat. Prioritize your digestion. For example, whole eggs are generally a super helpful food, but if they upset your stomach, do not eat them. Fill your diet with single ingredient whole foods, but do not eat anything that throws off your digestion, and that includes foods that happen to fall under the single ingredient whole foods umbrella. Now, for most folks, that advice alone, when implemented consistently, will clear up any, if not all, health issues that are nutrition related, which all of them have a nutritional component. Now, if not, some of you will need to get more granular. For example, like I mentioned, some folks are sensitive to dairy. Others don't do well with gluten, or nuts, or seeds, or beans, and legumes, or oxalates, or histamines, which are a problem for a bunch of folks. And this isn't even touching on specific macronutrient breakdowns that people do better or worse with. Nutrition can be quite simple and straightforward for some folks, and for others, it is highly specific. Like, the complexity would just make your eyes glaze over, because if you're not incredibly passionate about this stuff, it's just so unnecessarily specific and you just don't need to know all of the ins and outs. I say that to say, start by minimizing your processed food intake and increasing your single ingredient whole food intake. If that doesn't clear up your issues, you'll likely want to experiment without gluten and or dairy. And if you are still experiencing undesirable symptoms, you're probably going to want to just hire a professional, because this shit gets wildly nuanced very, very quickly. Movement. Get a minimum of 10,000 steps per day or hit a total of 70,000 steps over the course of the week as a whole. If you'd like to work out on top of that, garden, play rec sports, swim, ride your bike, run, do Pilates, Zumba, whatever, even better. But 10K steps per day is a baseline movement must for the health of your body. Sleep 7 to 9 hours per night. Go to bed as close as possible to when the sun goes down, and ideally wake up without an alarm. You should feel rested and alert virtually every day. Also, minimize behaviors that impact your sleep negatively, like alcohol intake, for example. Booze does an incredible job of disrupting sleep duration and quality. And like holding excess body fat, getting inadequate sleep literally increases the likelihood that you get every single disease. Because if the immune system, which is most active and quote unquote reboots itself while we sleep, isn't able to keep up with the demand, bad shit starts to happen. This is the definition of the domino effect, and that you'll see one issue come up, then another, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I am falling apart over here. And circling back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the pod, this stuff is cumulative. Everything adds up. And once that first domino goes, the second one typically isn't far behind it. Finally, stress management. In a nutshell, control what you can control and do your best to surrender to the rest. And I know that that is far easier said than done. But a few examples of controlling what you can control are your nutrition, movement, and sleep. Dialing these three fundamentals in will not only reduce your stress levels, because improper nutrition, movement, and sleep is highly stressful for the human body, but also because squaring away these three pillars makes you way more resilient to whatever uncontrollable life stressors happen to pop up. And this is undebatable, right? Just think, are you going to be better equipped to handle a family member falling ill if you're eating like shit, living a sedentary lifestyle, and barely sleeping? Or are you going to be more resilient when you're eating a super nutritious diet, walking on a daily basis, and getting great sleep? Exact same situation, but a drastically different experience and response in the same individual given their health status and habits. I want to leave you with this quote that I think puts all of this stuff into context, which is, "A healthy person has a million dreams, but an unhealthy person has just one." Being healthy isn't about being healthy just for the sake of it. The whole point is so that you can enjoy your life as much as possible and essentially squeeze as much fun into this game that we call life as we can. A healthy you means you are able to love your friends and family more. Literally, it is so much harder to love when you are drowning. It's also so much harder to laugh and have fun and play and contribute to your community and follow your passions and travel and have new experiences and learn and grow. Don't get me wrong, money is great, but health is true wealth. If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and/or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. On Instagram, I'm at n1fitness. On TikTok, I'm at the n1fitness. And on YouTube, I am at marcussadoo/n1fitness. Feel free to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform if you'd like to. And be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode useful, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya!